Having my own place felt like something I'd worked hard for. After years of noisy roommates, shared spaces, and walls so thin I could hear every late-night conversation, finally moving into a small one-bedroom unit at the end of a quiet street felt like peace. The building was simple: faded blue siding, a narrow front porch, a single chair near the door, nothing special. But it was mine. And the quiet meant everything. Quiet meant control. It meant I was alone. It meant I was safe. That illusion shattered at exactly 3:12 a.m. My phone vibrated against the nightstand, pulling me out of sleep. A notification from my door camera. Still half asleep, I assumed it was something harmless, a stray cat, maybe a raccoon, and opened the app without thinking. A woman was standing on my porch. She wasn't knocking. She wasn't moving around. She wasn't even looking at the camera. She just stood there under the dim porch light, angled slightly toward the door like she was waiting. My chest tightened instantly. She wore a dark hoodie pulled low over her head, loose black pants, worn sneakers. Nothing about her outfit stood out. It was her stillness that felt wrong. Too still, like she was listening. I replayed the footage. Then again. At one point, her head tilted slightly, just a few degrees, like she'd heard something from inside. I didn't sleep after that. The next night, the notification came again. Same time. 3:12 a.m. This time she was closer, standing at the top of the porch steps, only a few feet from the door. The camera caught more of her face now, pale, expressionless, her eyes locked on the door like she expected it to open. I checked every lock in the apartment. Front door. Back door. Windows. Everything was secure. I told myself she was just confused, maybe intoxicated, maybe she had the wrong place. But something about it didn't sit right. By the third night, she had moved again. Now she stood directly in front of the door. Slowly, she raised a finger to her lips. The gesture wasn't playful. It wasn't theatrical. It felt like a warning. I called my neighbor across the street, Mr. Hargrove, a quiet older man who spent most evenings sitting by his front window. He hadn't seen anyone. The next morning, I showed him the footage. His expression hardened. "That's not normal," he said. "You should call the police if she comes back." I nodded, but something held me back. The timing. The way she stood. The way she seemed to know. It didn't feel random. By the fifth night, I was exhausted and on edge. I sat in the living room with every light on, phone clutched in my hand, waiting. When the notification came, my heart hit so hard it made me dizzy. She was speaking. Her lips moved slowly, carefully, like she wanted the camera to catch every word. I replayed it over and over, frame by frame. "I know you're awake." A cold wave washed over me. After that, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the apartment made me jump. Every shadow felt wrong. On the 9th night, she pressed her palm flat against the door and leaned forward, resting her forehead against it like she was listening to my breathing. On the 11th night, the notification came again. But this time, something else followed. A sound. Inside the apartment. A slow, deliberate footstep. My entire body locked up. Another step followed. Unhurried. Calm. Whoever it was wasn't sneaking. They weren't in a rush. They knew I was there. I backed toward the bathroom, my hands shaking, and locked myself inside, pressing my weight against the door. I dialed emergency services with a trembling voice. "There's someone inside my apartment," I whispered. "And someone outside my door. Are you somewhere safe?" "I'm locked in the bathroom. Please, just hurry." My phone buzzed again. The camera app opened. The porch was empty at first. Then she stepped into frame, closer than ever. She leaned toward the camera and smiled, slow, deliberate, like she understood exactly what was happening. "He's almost there," she mouthed. The bathroom doorknob rattled. I screamed. The sound tore out of me as the door shook violently under a heavy. I grabbed the metal towel bar and ripped it from the wall, jamming it against the door as the wood splintered under the pressure. Then, suddenly, silence. I didn't wait. I threw the door open, ran through the apartment, and burst out the back exit, barefoot, sprinting across the yard without looking back. Police lights filled the street minutes later. They searched everything: the apartment, the yard, nearby homes. They found signs of forced entry at the back window. But no one inside. No man. No woman. Nothing. I moved out the next day. Sometimes, late at night, my phone still vibrates with notifications that disappear when I unlock it. And every time the clock reads 3:12 am, I double-check every lock. I didn't notice how unnaturally still the apartment felt until something broke the silence. A faint metallic click, barely there, like it came from inside the walls. A second later, a slow, careful scrape followed. I was drifting between sleep and wakefulness, my body heavy, but my mind snapped alert instantly. It wasn't loud. That was the worst part. It sounded deliberate, like someone trying very hard not to be heard. At the edge of the bed, Bruno went rigid. He was an aging husky mix, stiff in the joints and usually too tired to react to anything. But now, every muscle in his body tightened. His gaze locked onto the wall behind the wardrobe. A low growl rumbled out of him, deep, controlled, and steady. "Bruno," I whispered. He didn't respond. Didn't even blink. Then, it came again. Louder, metal shifting against metal. My heart slammed against my ribs, hard enough to make my throat tighten. Keeping my eyes fixed on that wall, I slowly slid out of bed and reached for my phone. The screen lit up the room harshly, almost painfully bright. Bruno's growl deepened, vibrating through him. I grabbed the wardrobe and dragged it aside. It screeched across the floor, kicking up a cloud of dust and revealing the vent behind it. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. The screws weren't gone, they were loose. Not corroded, not worn down. Recently loosened, just enough that the cover could be taken off quietly. I crouched down, my hands shaking so badly I had to press them against my legs to steady them. Bruno let out one sharp, explosive bark, then fell silent again. I pulled the vent cover free. It hit the floor with a hollow clang. I switched on my flashlight and pointed it into the duct. At first it looked empty. Then my eyes adjusted. There were food wrappers, crumpled protein bar packaging, an empty plastic bottle, a crushed juice carton shoved into the corner, and deeper inside, far enough that someone had to crawl to reach it, there was a filthy blanket, folded tightly like a makeshift nest. Someone had been living in the vents. A sound came from inside. A subtle shift. Weight moving. Not an animal. A person. I stumbled back, slamming into the wardrobe hard enough to rattle it. Bruno exploded into frantic barking as the movement inside the duct grew faster. Urgent. I didn't think. I ran. Barefoot, pulse screaming in my ears, I grabbed my jacket and keys and bolted out the front door with Bruno scrambling beside me. I didn't stop until I was outside under the flickering hallway light, my hands shaking so violently, I almost dropped my phone. I called emergency services. "There's someone in my apartment," I said, my voice breaking. "Inside the walls, the vents." "Are you safe right now?" "I'm outside. Please, just send someone." They arrived fast. They didn't laugh. They didn't question me. One look at the vent was enough. They searched everything. The attic space above, the crawl space below, every duct they could access. But the one I had opened? Empty. No wrappers. No bottle. No blanket. Nothing. Just dust. Long streaks cut through it. Smudges. Handprints. Drag marks. Other vents showed the same signs. Loosened screws. Disturbed dust. "He's been moving through the system," one officer muttered. "Careful. Knows what he's doing." I felt sick. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at my cousin's place, flinching at every creak, every shift of the building settling around us. Bruno never left my side. The next day, they escorted me back to gather my things. Walking inside felt wrong, like the air itself was aware of something I wasn't. Every vent made my skin crawl. Then I stepped into the living room. The blanket on the sofa had been rearranged, folded differently than how I'd left it, and on the coffee table, placed neatly beside the remote, was a small wooden cube. painted red. It belonged to my nephew. He had never been in that apartment. The toy box it came from was stored in a sealed container inside the spare room closet. The detective stared at it for a long moment before picking it up carefully with gloved hands. "He came out," he said quietly, "after you left. I never went back. The apartment was sold weeks later. I moved far away. Different city, different building, new locks, new habits. But sometimes, late at night, when the vents hum and the air begins to circulate, I hear it. A soft scrape, a quiet shuffle, metal shifting gently behind the walls. When my aunt asked if I could stay at her house for a while, I didn't hesitate. It didn't feel like a favor. It felt like an escape. A break from the noise, the constant responsibility, the pressure that never really let up. Her home sat far beyond the edge of town, surrounded by open land and aging trees that swayed endlessly in the wind. It was the kind of place that felt frozen in time. A large, weathered farmhouse with creaking floors, old furniture, and walls thick enough to hold decades of quiet. I was 35, drained from raising 2 kids. They were spending the week with my brother, and my wife was out of the city for work. For the first time in a long while, I was alone, and I needed it. The first few days were calm, predictable. I fell into a simple routine: coffee at the kitchen table each morning, feeding my aunt's dog, Rusty, checking the locks, watering the plants, then passing the time with a book or low background noise, just to keep the silence from feeling too heavy. It wasn't until the 4th morning that something started to feel off. Rusty began acting differently around that time. He was an older lab mix, usually lazy and uninterested in anything beyond food and sleep. But now, he stayed close to me constantly. His ears twitched at sounds I couldn't hear. He'd stop suddenly and stare at nothing. That night I woke up to a faint noise above me. Not footsteps. Not exactly. More like movement. A soft shift. Something dragging slightly, then stopping. Careful. Measured. I held my breath and listened. After a moment, the house settled again. Silence. The next day, I decided to check everything. Room by room, closet by closet. I didn't know what I expected to find. I just needed to prove to myself that I was still alone. Everything seemed normal, until I reached the attic. I hadn't planned on going up there. I'd avoided it since I arrived. But as I passed the narrow door at the end of the hallway, Rusty stopped dead. He wouldn't move. His body stiffened, his eyes locked upward, teeth slightly bared. That was enough for me. I pulled the ladder down and climbed. The attic smelled like dust and old wood. Boxes were stacked unevenly, covered in sheets and forgotten furniture. As I stepped further in, my foot brushed against something loose. A pile of blankets shifted slightly. Behind them, an opening. Not damage, not age. Intentional. A narrow hole cut into the wall, its edges worn smooth as if something, or someone, had passed through it repeatedly. Beyond it, there was only darkness. A hollow space between the walls, wide enough for a person to crawl through. My stomach dropped. I crouched down, my pulse hammering, and noticed faint marks in the dust, long scuffs running back and forth. Someone had been moving through the house. Hidden. Everything clicked at once. The strange sounds, the misplaced objects, Rusty's behavior. Someone had been inside the walls, waiting until I slept. Walking through rooms I thought were empty. I backed away slowly. That's when I heard it. A soft scrape behind me. I turned. A man stood near the opening. His skin was pale, his face hollow, like he hadn't seen sunlight in a long time. His eyes were fixed on me, calm, unreadable. He smiled. Not wide, not friendly, just enough. "You're not supposed to be up here," he said quietly. I screamed. Everything after that blurred together. I don't remember climbing down the ladder. I don't remember grabbing my phone. I called emergency services with shaking hands. "There's someone inside the house," I said. "He's been hiding in the walls." "Are you safe right now?" "I'm outside. Please, just hurry." The police arrived quickly. They searched everything: the attic, the walls, crawl spaces. But he was gone. No fingerprints, no belongings. Just disturbed insulation and narrow pathways worn into places no one should have been able to reach. They believed me. Somehow, that made it worse. I didn't stay another night. My aunt sold the house within weeks. I moved not long after. New place, new locks, no attic. But sometimes, late at night, when everything goes quiet.
Before you go, tell me, which part of this story felt too familiar? Drop it below. You won't be the only one. Most people close this tab and go to sleep. Most people. You're not most people. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. These aren't one-off horrors. They're pieces of a larger nightmare. New darkness every week.